I'm really passionate about internet rabbit holes. Do you even know how big the internet is? It's hard to get an exact measurement, but it's measured in the tens of zettabytes. 1 zettabyte is 1024 exabytes, which are 1024 petabytes, which are 1024 terabytes, which are 1024 gigabytes, which are 1024 megabytes. Your average web page is around 2 megabytes. The internet is larger than some people's life's work by 16 orders of magnitude. 90% of it is garbage, at least according to Sturgeon's law, mindless trash not worth spending your limited time on this earth on. But 10% of 10 zettabytes is still more bytes than there are stars in space. 0.0000001% is more than all of YouTube, and there are enough rabbit holes in 10 to the negative 15th of the internet to last a lifetime. That much content is overwhelming, terrifying, and breathtakingly beautiful. Because of the internet, I've fallen in love over and over and over again with subjects so diverse it puts the tree of life to shame. Why am I telling you this? Well, because Project Horizons is intimidating. There's no getting around that, but that shouldn't scare you. That should excite you. It excited me, at least. So much that I actually read it cover to cover over the span of about 3 months. Instead of doing charity work or mowing lawns over the summer, I read 1.7 million words of My Little Pony fanfiction. God, that hurt to say. I'm at least somewhat self-aware. I know how dumb this sounds. So much so, this is actually my second time writing and recording this thing. The first time I tried to sound as tired and detached as possible to not go through the horrifying ordeal of publicly unironically liking something that the rest of the internet treats like the bubonic plague. But what's that I hear? My muse, Scott the Woz.
Is basically the bubonic plague. I've been there, and I'm here to combat those people by stripping that word of all negativity.
You're right, Lord Wozniak. I shall follow your teachings to the letter. I love Fallout Equestria Project Horizons. This is bubonic. Project Horizons is derivative fiction of an already derivative fiction, aka recursive derivative fiction that I've already spoken at length about. Safe to say, all my praise about the world building carries over, since it's the same world. Project Horizons is one of the few side fics acknowledged by KCAT, but she's already made it clear that acknowledgement or approval does not imply canonicity. At the moment, she has said that no side fics are canon, nor does she plan on making any canon. This is irrelevant to Project Horizons though, since it's largely canon compliant. It builds its story around the original, filling in cracks and expanding upon things. I know it makes no sense, but I usually think of it as DLC to the original, adding a new area, mechanics, and storyline while still existing parallel to the base. Call it what you want, all you really need to know is that it takes place at the same time as Fallout Equestria and tries its best to stay within the same canon. It does this by making its main setting an entirely different region, a new region called Hoovington, placed directly east of Equestria proper, a playground where the author Somber can do whatever they want without interfering with established canon. And for Somber, whatever they want just so happens to be putting the main character, Blackjack, through as much suffering as possible. You'd think 1.7 million words would be enough room for the suffering to be spread out, but no. No, you don't know the half of it. Whenever I don't know how to end a paragraph, I'll just go back to the list of suffering, trademarked, and regale you with various statistics on how much shit Blackjack goes through. I'd warn for spoilers, but let's face it, you're not going to read this. Only the highest tier of humanity, those with nothing better to do, can take on this gargantuan task. Book 1. The Security Mare. The first chapter is somewhat similar to the OG story, but with various tonal shifts that make you know what to expect for the next 77 chapters. It is far more explicit than FOE ever was. If FOE hinted at it, Project Horizon spends a whole paragraph talking about it. Just take Little Pip and homage, and crank it up to 11. It's not meant to arouse the reader, though. It's not given a spotlight, a sensual saxophone, and fluttering rose petals. It's simply presented as another aspect of a raw and visceral world. It lingers on two mares enjoying each other's company in the showers just as long as it spends talking about how boring Blackjack's job is. In fact, as part of stable security, it's part of her job to shut down things like this. But of course she doesn't, because Blackjack is nothing if not a thrill seeker. With a queen and an ace as a cutie mark, it's no surprise she's a chronic risk taker, a skilled gambler, and a terrible rule enforcer. The only reason she's in security is because jobs are passed down through bloodlines in Stable 99. Her mom owes security, ergo she is security. The whole family business aspect of Stable 99 wasn't part of Stable 99's experiment though. No. Stable 99 was a testing ground for recycling taken to the logical extreme. Everything ponies produce, waste, hair, dead bodies, everything, is put into the recycler and turned into usable resources. It's no wonder Blackjack's motto is "Don't think about it." Sadly, that mantra has spread to other parts of life in Stable 99, not just the recycling system. Ponies stopped thinking about what was right, what was wrong, even what was best for the stable. They listened to the Overmare and nobody else, so it was only a matter of time until the Overmare bloodline produced a woefully incompetent, irresponsible, and downright malevolent heir to the throne. The last Overmare of Stable 99 isn't even given a name. She's so drunk on power she insists that everyone call her Overmare and nothing else. She is by all accounts the least qualified pony to run the stable, but since her mom was the Overmare, so is she. She is a villain with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Oh, and she's a child. Did I forget to mention that? So yeah, the Overmare was never meant to be sympathized with. She never plays the pity card or acts anywhere close to a normal girl barely out of primary school. By all means, she's the most hateable villain imaginable. Or at least that's the way she's presented on the surface. It's revealed that she's the latest in the long line of abusive Overmares later in the story. Hate compounds on hate, and it was only a matter of time until that hate reached self-destructive levels. I'm not trying to defend her, by all means she needed to die in order to stop the cycle of abuse, but it's still incredibly tragic that generations of hate and abuse were stuffed into one child. Her character arc is basically Azula on steroids, except she passed the point of no redemption a long time ago. And all of this happened because stable ponies didn't think about it. So it's only fitting that the main conflict gets kicked off the first time Blackjack does think about it. She does what she does best. She makes a rash, split-second decision based off a gut feeling. In this case, the gut feeling is that beating a defenseless stallion to death is wrong. This may seem obvious, but that's only because I haven't mentioned Stable 99's other quirk. As a result of a vague incident that happened generations before Blackjack was born, all males born in Stable 99 are treated as breeding equipment, both as a way to keep the population number controlled and to prevent another incident. All males are assigned as U1 or P1 at birth, depending on whether they're a unicorn or an earth pony. If another male is born, their designation is updated to U2 or P2. Once a male becomes P21 or U21, they are executed by lethal injection, which is why it's so important that Blackjack saves P21. As security, it's her job to collect P and U21s and escort them to medical to retire, and she's even done so multiple times. The thing is, it's a lot harder to not think about it when a P21 is being beaten to death in front of you. So she breaks the rules of the stable in order to follow her department's core mantra: security saves ponies. Come to think of it, Blackjack has a lot of catchphrases. There's security saves ponies, I'm not an executioner, don't think about it, I'm not a smart pony, anti-up, and the word fuck. These are pretty much the 6 pillars of Blackjack's character. She saves ponies, she doesn't believe she's capable of judging whether a pony should live or die, she tries not to think about what she's doing, lest she succumb to the moral implications of her actions, she has a very low opinion of herself, especially her intelligence, she's a gambler at heart, and I believe that last one is self-explanatory. Anywho, she saves P21, and this leads to one of the most brilliant character dynamics I've ever seen, especially in repeat readings. You see, P21's view of Blackjack is the textbook definition of can't live with him, can't live without him. P21 needs Blackjack to survive for more than a second in the wasteland, but he also hates her with a burning passion for being complicit in the system that turned a fallout shelter into a rape factory. But Blackjack, who's lived her entire life not thinking about it, can't fathom the reason why P21 hates her so much. It's hilarious, sure, but it's also another tragedy. When they go into the wasteland together, Blackjack can't see much more from P21 other than whiny, grumpy, and antagonistic to her every attempt to be nice. Over the next 16 chapters, Blackjack's character arc is all about learning just how wrong Stable 99's system was. And one could argue P21 doesn't truly stop hating Blackjack until chapter 33, when the tables are turned. Before that point, he's in a constant inner conflict between his desire to kill Blackjack and his desire to survive, because most of the time, those are mutually exclusive. It's red Oni, blue Oni, but the blue Oni is the one full of rage. Also, now that I think about it, P21 is literally blue, and red is Blackjack's accent color. Did Somber plan this? Whatever, I thought it was clever. Let's see, is there anything else I want to cover before we get into the list of suffering trademarked? Oh yeah, all of Blackjack's ancestors are named after card games. It goes Card Trick, Tarot, Little Poker, Full House, 52 Pickup, Straight Flush, Aces, Royal Flush, Bridge, Hearts, Gin Rummy, and Go Fish / Blackjack. Yeah, her real name is Go Fish. On to the list. Chapter 1. Home is invaded. She has to kill a pony for the first time. About half of everyone she knows is either killed or raped. Chapter 2. She gets shot in the back by a raider she spared and by her closest companion P21. Chapter 3. Gets an orphan torn in half by ghouls over an ammo pack, gets so rad sick she's bedridden for days and is so guilty she contemplates suicide and mutates glowing eyeballs. 4. Gets shot in the face at point blank range with a beam pistol. 5. Fights a giant rat scorpion, watches her friend get slowly poisoned to death by said rat scorpion. 6. Watches as her intestines get ripped out and forced to pull the plug on 40 foals with terminal injuries that have been fully conscious for 200 years, causing them to go insane. 7. Gets a lot more suicidal from guilt, nearly dies in a fight against a cyborg with guns larger than her torso, gets a 50,000 big cat bounty on her head, 100,000 caps alive. 8. Fights a dragon, goes through a severe moral dilemma after almost killing a slaver with a child. 9. Watches a pony get fed through a rock crusher, fails to stop a zebra who she assumed was an ally, gunned down innocent slaves, gets hospitalized for days after being shot in the spine by said zebra. 10. Forced to kill a friend, infected with a plague that makes her turn cannibalistic, refuses to kill his labor boss in front of a mob of escaped slaves, rides out of town crippled on a minecart. 11. Watched a family of pilgrims walk willingly to their deaths at the hands of laser turrets. 12. Came to terms with the fact that she raped P-21 even if at the time she didn't know it was wrong. 13. Watched as her friend was branded a Dashite, a traitor to her own people by chemically burning a lightning bolt on her flank. And it's at this point we need to backtrack a bit because I completely forgot to talk about Morning Glory, but at the same time, what was I supposed to talk about? She doesn't really get any character development outside conversational personality traits until chapter 13, even though she's introduced in chapter 4. This story tends to do that a lot, introduce a character that isn't all too important to round out the cast a little, and then develop that character by putting them to the belt sander of suffering. The best kind of character development. That's not to say Morning Glory is purposeless in the universe. It makes sense that she does the things she does, including joining Blackjack's party. She's part of the Enclave Volunteer Corps, a division of the Grand Pegasus Enclave that's far more progressive than the rest. They're the only Pegasi to come down and interact with the surface on a regular basis, providing food and medicine. They're super controversial in Enclave politics, seen as their purpose goes directly against the isolationist ideals the Enclave depends on to exist. That's the reason they aren't doing more. Any more support from the higher-ups would require a complete restructuring of the government. Anyway, what was I talking about? Alright, Morning Glory is loyal to the Enclave, believing them to have the potential to save the wasteland. They do, of course, but not without a massive shift in power. However, her loyalty to the Enclave extends to all of the Enclave, which makes for a fascinating character study on loyalty, betrayal, and naivety. Morning Glory gets betrayed a lot. Her government, her family, her friends, nearly everyone she's ever met turns their back on her at one point or another, but she still sees the good in everyone, even if it isn't there. She argues to save foals that have been dying perpetually for 200 years. She defends the system that disowned and disgraced her. She stands up for people who tried to kill her. She is loyal to a fault. And I do mean that. Her blind loyalty isn't noble, it isn't virtuous, it isn't admirable. It's a fault, a flaw, and a blemish. So when put to the belt sander of suffering, it's removed. Slowly. Very slowly. Bit by bit, she comes to terms with the betrayals she goes through and comes out the other side still loyal, but not to a fault. She also comes out very crispy like a well-done french fry, but let's not worry about that. At the end of the chapter, Blackjack freaking annihilates a vertibird and blows a hole through a building with a super weapon the size of a flare gun. What? Chapter 14. Blackjack takes a drug cocktail after being shot through the chest and ends up incapacitated and in terrible pain for several hours. Her heart stopped for a little while. Chapter 15. Nearly got eaten by a mutated Hydra, blew up an explosives factory, incapacitated by the shockwave, woke up with a slave collar and the detonator in the hooves of P-21. And now we're at chapter 16, the last chapter of book 1, and it's a fantastic finale chapter. First off, it starts off with a bang and has one of the best opening dialogues I've ever seen. At this point, Blackjack's gone through a lot, but it's generally played straight. She suffers because A, it's realistic for the setting, and B, it allows her character to develop into an entity capable of doing what the author has planned for her. Blackjack's strength comes not from her arsenal, magic, or charisma, definitely not that last one, but from the story throwing everything it possibly can at her and her reaction being to just roll with the punches. One of the themes of Fallout Equestria is that everybody has a virtue, a quality of their self that is integral to who they are. As long as they have that one thing at the end of the day, they can live with themselves until tomorrow, when the time comes to defend it again. Little Pip's sacrifice. As long as she gives everything she has for those she cares about, she can live with herself. It's not explicit, but it's implied that Blackjack's virtue is persistence. As long as she keeps moving forward towards some distant mountain, the wasteland cannot break her. This is brilliantly used against her later in the story, but for now it's an explanation for how she can go through so much and somehow come out on top. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. As long as she's alive at the end of the day, she can live with herself until tomorrow. We should have seen this coming. With a queen and ace as a cutie mark, how could she not win at the end of the day? More on that later. Anyway, this is one of the coolest in-universe explanations for plot armor, but what was the point I was trying to make here? Well, at the beginning of chapter 16, Blackjack finally cashes in on how terrifying it would be to have her as an enemy. Take a listen.
And now that I think about it, blowing my head off might kill me, but it would completely fuck you. You work for Deus, right? Deus, the Reaper I shot with artillery. Deus, the Reaper who wants to invent whole new methods of mayhem to try out on me. I would love to see what he does to you when you tell him that you cheated him out of his revenge, I said with glee. You're insane! I laughed again. I'm insane? Oh, trust me, you have no idea. Come to think of it, Deus wouldn't be the only pony pissed to not kill me. I got an entire family of bounty hunters after me. Ever hear of them? The Zodiac family? And I just know that there'd be hordes of bounty hunters all over the hoof who'd be mighty put out with a brown unicorn cheating them of their hopes and dreams. Especially if you actually collected on the bounties and had thousands and thousands of caps in your pockets. You're wearing a bomb. That's crazy. You're crazy. Crazy? I've been passed beer by freaking hallucinations. Don't you tell me what crazy is. The Enclave might be okay with you killing me, but after what I did to their Vertibuck, I'm pretty sure they'd be pissed at you for cheating them out of their chance to interrogate me with their newest death plague, or the chance to feed me limb by limb to a bunch of raiders. You? And that's not mentioning what my friends will do to you. I have helped a few ponies in the hoof, and I'm pretty sure that some of them wouldn't mind getting some payback on my behalf. Dusty Trails, Bottle Cap, and potentially every cult and filly you pass might want to put a bullet in you. Then there's Rampage. Does Deus mention Rampage? Fellow Reaper actually wants me alive for her own plot or scheme or amusement? And if she doesn't, you can spend every second of the rest of your life wondering when Morning Glory is going to vaporize you from above at the speed of light. Have you ever been sniped with a beam rifle? Have you? 'Cause I have!
Blackjack?
But what's really funny to me, really funny, is that P21 would put a bomb on me and hand you the button. 'Cause if there's gonna be any pony in all of Equestria, in all the bloody fucked up world that has a goddess-given right to blow my head off, it would be him. See this? This does nothing. P21's too smart to give you the real trigger.
Blackjack! That is the detonator.
It is? Well, I hadn't expected that. Oopsie on the last one.
And it's played for laughs at the end. This story is amazing. It knows exactly where to put moments of brevity where they don't interfere with what should be a serious moment. Sometimes a whole chapter is all about taking a break, letting the characters recover from some especially serious stuff, and those chapters are by far my favorite. It's insanely cathartic to watch characters that had their lives ruined a few chapters earlier starting to heal in small ways. There are so many charming moments that would be nothing special in a slice of life fic, but in Fallout Equestria they bring tears to my eyes. I'm sure you know why that is, I won't bore you with the details, but know that Project Horizons walks the thin line that comes with the trope better than most. I'm talking about the balance between tension and relief. The moments of brevity here are spaced out far, but the tone of these scenes bleed into the lower stakes action scenes a lot too. It's like a vast sea of stars, with a few stars bright enough to bring a faint light to the entire sky. You'll see later why this metaphor is appropriate. Heck, Book 2 is literally called Blood and Stars. Stars are a big motif in the entire story. You'll see later when Blackjack dies. Twice. Kind of. She dies anywhere from 2 to 5 times, depending on your definition of death. Anyway, back in the present, Blackjack was facing off against Deus. This fight serves double duty as the conclusion of the first major conflict and as an emotional reconciliation between P21 and Blackjack. In the end, it's fantastically done, climactic as hell, and got a smirk out of me at a certain part. Like I said, the writing is pervasively tongue-in-cheek, and this fight is no exception. But this story is emotional first and fun second, so the final confrontation with P21 is what I found most memorable about not just this chapter, but the entirety of Book 1. The setting is cinematic for one, with it raining and the conversation being on the edge of a cliff of rubble. What's most impressive though is the contrast between the Blackjack of now and Blackjack 16 chapters ago. It's pointed out pretty explicitly, but I still found it a cool comparison. She's gone through a complex character arc and ultimately came out with 2 tons of emotional baggage. But with the weight of your sins bearing down on you at every waking moment, you either die, you give into it, or you do better. As always, Blackjack chooses door number 3. In the words of P21,
You take the hard road no matter how damn much it hurts you, and I can only watch in awe that you keep walking it.
Now that'd be a fine note to end this retrospective on, but here's the thing. While rereading the story for research purposes, I paid less attention to the major emotional beats because I knew they were coming, so they weren't nearly as effective on the second go-around. So what did I pay attention to? The characters, the back and forth, the jokes, banter, one-liners, all the little things that might not have made the story better in a literary sense, but made my reading experience exponentially better because it made it fun. And that's really the bottom line here. Project Horizons, for all its tear-jerking, heart-wrenching, thought-provoking moments appropriate for exploring the human condition through the lens of the apocalypse, is really fun to read. It made me laugh and cry in equal amounts. I think Morning Glory puts it best in Chapter 8 when talking about Blackjack.
She can be obtuse, vulgar, and obscene in one moment, and then in the next she's kind, laughing, and more noble than any pony I know. She killed children one day and saves them the next. Is it some kind of schizophrenia? Or can a pony actually survive being torn in 2 directions so severely?
The story itself is the same way. It's torn between fun and fear constantly, but instead of breaking and becoming a parody of itself, it survives with its authenticity intact and delivers emotional gut punches chapter after chapter while still being so much fun. So join me next time when I cover the second book, Blood and Stars. The character list gets longer, the world is expanded, and the stakes get higher. Or as Blackjack would say, ante up. Oh, and I'm adding this in post, but you might have noticed I didn't use a single ponyism like some pony or every pony. What can I say? Professionals have standards.